Let's call to order the City Council meeting for the City of Highland Park, Illinois, October 24th, 2022. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Tapia.
Present.
Councilmember Stolberg.
Here.
Councilmember Stone. Here. Councilmember Bloomberg.
Here.
Councilmember Holloman. Here. Councilmember Littlewer.
Present.
Mayor Rotering.
Here, we have a quorum. Everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So though the first item is approval of the minutes, we have no minutes for this evening, so we'll continue on. I'm seeking approval of the warrant list.
So moved.
Right, that was like a tie.
Second.
Okay. Any comments or questions on the warrant list? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilmember Tapia.
Yes.
Councilmember Stolberg.
Yes.
Councilmember Stone.
Aye.
Councilmember Bloomberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Holloman. Aye. Councilmember Littlewer.
Aye.
Mayor Rotering.
Aye, 7 ayes, no nays. The warrant list is approved. I will now continue on with the report of the mayor. I have no appointments this evening. I have no proclamations this evening. I do want to share that as we look ahead to cooler weather, despite the incredible second summer we just had this past weekend, we're all reminded that the season of giving is coming. Food insecurity continues to be a concern for families throughout Lake County, including among many of our neighbors here in Highland Park. This evening, Moraine Township Trustee Christine Pescher joins us to share more information about the Moraine Township Food Pantry and the families they serve through this valuable resource. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here. Thank you to all the council members for including me in tonight's agenda. I won't be too long. As the mayor said, yes, food insecurity, even in Highland Park, continues to be a problem. At Moraine Township, we feel pretty honored to offer a food pantry to our residents. And so I'm here tonight in seeking some help to help amplify the message that our pantry is bare, our shelves are bare. We've seen this before, but what's different this time, as many of you all know, when you go to the grocery store, food costs are rising. Demand is up and inventory is down. And so typically what we would do is we would buy food from the Northern Illinois Food Bank below cost, which is a wonderful way to be able to fill our shelves. Unfortunately, that inventory has really decreased by about half. They would normally get about 10 pallets of food dropped a month. It's down to 4 or 5. So we're really seeing significant decreases in inventory. And perhaps, and you know, it's certainly no judgment for anyone, but I think sometimes what happens is we get out of the habit of donating, and we get out of the habit of remembering when we're at the grocery store to pick up a few extra things. So again, I'm here in front of the council and in front of the residents that are here tonight to just help remind them that we do need to continue to take care of our residents who are facing food insecurity on a daily basis. One thing I will say is that the website, morainetownship.org, has a current list of shopping food items. So if donating food is something that you can, Central Avenue in Highland Park.
And you're open to accept donations Monday through Friday?
Exactly, Monday through Friday during business hours, which are 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. We do ask that donations not be dropped after business hours for things like perishable items and food items, so
And people need to make sure that they're not expired.
thank you.
And
Yes,
they're all, and
exactly.
you're also looking for personal care items in addition to food.
We do. Yes, our residents who qualify for SNAP benefits, we do provide household items for them as well, so that's welcome, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Councilmember Tapia's hand is up.
Yeah, I'm just curious, how many families roughly on average do you feed over there? on a monthly
Gosh,
basis?
I just looked at the numbers for October. We have served, and we're not done with October yet, so this number is going to go up a little bit this week. We're serving about 200 walk-in. That's not including who we deliver to. We deliver to our seniors, and we're going to continue to deliver as the winter months come, because what's happening is people are walking to the pantry, and that's going to be hard to sustain, certainly when we're seeing people that are waiting an hour ahead of time before the pantry even opens. So we're going to increase our deliveries, but I would say we're probably about, 220, we're probably going to, well, gosh, that's low. I'm going to say we're about 250 just in the month of October, and that's up at least by about 75 from October of last year at this time. So the numbers really are up. The demand is there.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for coming tonight.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely, yeah.
So we encourage everyone to help support the food pantry And if you're not able to donate food at this time, but still want to support, you can help spread the word. And again, the website is Moraine, MORAINE, township.org. Thanks, trustee, for coming. So Tuesday, November 8th is Election Day, and as always, it's vital to make your voice heard through your vote. Voting is your chance to elect representatives at the local, state, and federal levels who share your values and will advocate for your priorities. Elected officials are the voice of our communities in all levels of government. Today was the first day of early voting. I was there, and we're lucky to have the Highland Park Public Library hosting early voting through Sunday, November 6th. It's right next door, 494 Laurel Avenue. Information about early voting times is available online at cityhpil.com and was published in the latest issue of the Highlander. If you prefer to vote by mail, there is still time to request your vote by mail ballot. You can call 847-377-VOTE. That's 847-377-VOTE. Or you can email the Lake County Clerk at votingbymail@lakecountyil.gov, or you can apply online at lakevoterpower.info. But be sure to vote. That is it for the report of the mayor. We will now move to business from city staff. Gita, are you giving this first item, or is Aaron?
Thank you, Mayor. We have 3 items to present to the council and public this evening. If we can go to the next slide. And Assistant Manager Aaron Jason will present this first information.
Good evening. It's fun when I get to talk about the fun stuff, the events. So the Heart of the Holidays event series is coming up. It's going to feature pop-up entertainment, food and beverage vendors, weekly themes, and other activities throughout the downtown. So it will not be in one stationary place. You'll see activity happening across the board in the downtown area for 4 Saturdays, November 19th and 26th, December 4th and 10th, and all of those activities take place from 2 to 4 p.m. And then the annual Ravinia District Cookie and Cocoa Crawl will be held on Saturday, December 3rd from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. And for that event, families are invited to bring their kids out to collect festive cookies and enjoy hot cocoa while they stroll the streets and explore the festival holiday decorations throughout the business district. So you see on the screen here, November 19th is Sugar Plum Shopping Spree, the 26th, Small Business Saturday. December 3rd has a Frozen theme, and December 10th is Santa's Village and Hanukkah. And I also want to add one that's not on the slide. Before we get into the holiday season, if you are a fan of cold weather comfort foods, The Lot has one more event for you on November 4th. That Friday from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. will be Stews and Brews. So chili, beer, all kinds of comfort foods for cold weather. So we're excited to have you out. We had over 3,300 guests counted at the Vintage Market this past weekend, so we'd love to see people participating in lot events.
And before all of that, you can go trick-or-treating on the 31st from 3 till 7?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes.
Yes.
I know my trick-or-treating. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll just remind the public that we're going to continue to share information with the public via our e-news. Individuals can follow us on social media, or information is always posted on the city's website on the community calendar. If we can go to the next slide. And the next item under the staff report is an update of major projects for the third quarter. A spreadsheet is included in the packet for public information, and we highlight all updates that are in red, so it's easily identifiable of the progress that we've made thus far. What you see here on the slide is just a summary. This was prepared by our communications manager, Amanda Civitello, summarizing how all of these major projects align with our city priorities, which are fiscal stability, public safety, infrastructure investment, and community vibrancy. Now, these major projects are outside of the city's day-to-day operation, and so we put together at the start of the year a list of major projects that we plan to undertake, who the key staff person is that's taken the lead, when they are anticipated to be undertaken, and we provide progress reports each quarter. So it's not surprising that most of these major projects, again, because they are outside of our day-to-day operations, they are unique projects that they fall under the community vibrancy priority. So that's why you see most of them are listed there in red. We have 127 of these projects, and you can see the progress that's reflected here on the screen or again in the spreadsheet in the packet. And then our last update, if we can go to the next slide, just want to give the public an update of where we are at with the temporary memorial. First, we're going to continue to remind the public and share that the city does intend to have a long-term memorial that will be organized. But as we all know, there are individuals that are still healing from their physical wounds, and so we want to give time for them to be part of this process, and also to respect the grieving process that everyone is still going through. So we are going to present in the first quarter of next year a framework for undertaking the process to establish a long-term memorial. We'll present that to the City Council. We're going to be in regular, continued communication with all the victims and with the public. So again, we're encouraging people to sign up for the e-news to stay abreast of that information. The temporary memorial is planned to locate at the Rose Garden, and everything will be ready by Saturday, November 5th. We are working on a lease agreement with the Park District that will be on the next City Council agenda for formal consideration. This property is owned by the Park District, but we're going to be taking over maintenance of it for this temporary period. And as a staff, we've been, City Manager's Office and Public Works, as well as other departments, have been working on a number of different improvements. So for example, we're going to have an ADA temporary walkway that will be installed over that gravel path. We're going to have some additional planting, additional seating. We've already removed the antelope sculpture, so he will find a new home elsewhere in the community. And then we've been working with each of the families of the lives that were tragically taken from us, and there will be personalized plaques for each individual that will be at the Rose Garden. And we will have one plaque featuring all 7 names in memory of those individuals that will be placed at the current temporary memorial site, which is the southwest corner of Central and St. John's. We are working with the archivist at the library, and all those items that were removed at both the Veterans Memorial Site as well as the southwest corner have been reviewed by the archivist. Again, we're working with the families of the victims and making sure that anything personal they're able to review and take, and we will preserve what is appropriate. And again, we're just going to continue to communicate with the victims, their families, as well as with the general public through the modalities that were previously mentioned.
Thank you. And I just want to thank you again for your deliberation and thoughtfulness and care, and to your team as we've moved forward through this difficult situation as we try to memorialize and provide a place of reflection and peace. And I want to share our absolute gratitude to the Park District of Highland Park for their partnership throughout this process as well. So thanks for the report.
Can I make one comment, Mayor? Just briefly?
Sure, I see a few hands up.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just, Gita flew through the other stuff, and I just wanted to say, with all those projects, and nobody could have foreseen the tragedy on July 4th, and the additional time and effort and work that you and your staff were required to put in, to be able to still keep our city in some semblance of normalcy and moving forward is a tremendous accolade to you and the staff.
Absolutely.
So I just wanted to make sure I said that.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Councilmember Littleworth?
I just wanted to say that at this weekend's lot event, a lot of people did stop by where the temporary memorial had been. I think the signage was very helpful because it directed people, because people were sort of looking around, and there was a tremendous amount of work which was done to take things down. It's very clean, it's very nice. I do think that if we can, make that sign look a little warmer in terms of just, but the signage itself, in terms of what it says, it's really good, and people definitely were going by there, so that was it.
Great, thank you. Anybody else? Nope, okay, thank you. Is there any business from the council? Hearing none, we will move now to, this is from the public. This is for residents wishing to be heard on an item not on tonight's agenda. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak on an item not on tonight's agenda?
Mayor, it's all citizens, not just residents.
All residents, not just citizens.
No, it's anyone who would like to speak.
Is anybody here? All humans who wish to be heard on an item not on tonight's agenda. Okay. We'll get that squared away. Thank you. Okay, we will then continue on to scheduled business. Items 1 through 9 have been grouped together for omnibus consideration. Is there a motion to approve items 1 through 9?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments or questions on items 1 through 9? Any members of the public who wish to comment on any of the items 1 through 9? Okay, we will take that vote then.
Councilmember Tapia?
Aye.
Councilmember Stolberg?
Aye.
Councilmember Stone?
Aye.
Councilmember Bloomberg?
Aye.
Councilmember Holloman? Aye. Councilmember Littlewer?
Aye.
Mayor Rotering?
Aye, 7 ayes, no nays. Items 1 through 9 have been approved. We have no other business, so to that end, I'm seeking now a motion to adjourn the city council meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And we are adjourned. You can all go home, or you can stick around. We're going to be talking about other stuff not related to the agenda that was posted for the city council meeting. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Are we staying here?
Do you want us to go into there for the committee? For closed? So we'll be open here, closed in there? Gotcha, thank you. All righty,
We do have minutes on this one.
thank you. Okay, so let's call to order the Committee of the Whole for the City Council of Highland Park, October 24th, 2022. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Tapia?
Here.
Councilmember Stolberg?
Here.
Councilmember Stone?
Here.
Councilmember Bloomberg?
Here.
Councilmember Holloman? Here. Councilmember Littlewer?
Here.
Mayor Rotering?
Here, we have a quorum. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of the Committee of the Whole from October 11th, 2022?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Our scheduled business this evening is a conversation regarding the payment in lieu of affordable housing fees. Joel?
Mayor, this is a repeat of the presentation the council had previously seen. We're pleased to go through it if you like, or just open it up for policy discussion.
So, to that end, do people need to have a repeat presentation? Or do you want to just go to the last page and talk about the suggested alternatives? Okay,
That'd be fine.
Okay, last page. So we'll go to-
last page.
Second.
So I do think people might want just sort of, again, your brief summary
Yes.
of the 5 options that were presented.
So Mayor, just to repeat, at the June 1st meeting of the Housing Commission, the commission had recommended that the fee in lieu be increased from $125 to $185.4 thousand per unit to reflect the average government subsidy from all sources needed to acquire and bring online an affordable unit through the city's scattered site program since 2018. Just to remind the council, when the Housing Commission first recommended a payment in lieu, it employed the following recommended overarching criteria, which still holds true today. So this goes back from the 2003 initial planning work that went into the housing program, and specifically the payment in lieu fee. One, that the amount should relate to the cost of making a unit of market rate housing affordable to a household at the target level. 2, the amount should be meaningful but reasonable so as not to impose an inappropriate burden on developers and/or landowners. And 3, the methodology should be simple, easy to communicate and understand, and based on objective, verifiable assumptions. And so, using those tenets, the Housing Commission examined market data as well as programmatic cost information to come to its recommendation to you. There's multiple alternative motions that we provided in the communication to the Housing Commission and again in the communication to the City Council for your consideration. The Housing Commission did choose to recommend the 185.4, which you're seeing here. And the rationale was to reflect the average government subsidy from all sources needed to acquire, bring online an affordable unit through the city's scattered site program based on the average programmatic leverage since 2018. So that's based on program costs. They were informed by the market data approach as well, but that is the rationale for their specific recommendation, Mayor.
And so the funds for the programmatic leverage, are those federally based, state-based, regionally based? And do we have and are they all the above? And also, do we have any intel in terms of whether those are changing, whether those are also going to be impacted by inflation or recession and so on?
Sure. So the leverage that we achieve through our grant making comes through SEPA's capacity to leverage various federal government programs through the county. Lake County gets an allocation of community development block grant funds, et cetera, and through that, we are able to leverage additional funds. What we've been told and what SEPA has indicated to the Housing Commission that we have been since 2018 able to provide grants at about $67,500 per unit that we leverage, right? So the $67,000 is the monies from our Housing Trust Fund that SEPA then uses to leverage additional monies, as we just spoke about, from various sources, other governmental, state, and federal programs combined to bring an affordable unit online. That base number or request, the 67.5, is changing. Based on programmatic changes, SEPA has indicated that going forward they're looking to request for $85,000 per unit. So things have changed, but since the period 2018 till just before this period, which will be starting in 2023, and we did budget for that in the recommended budget for 2023, we have sufficient funds to leverage 3 affordable units in the request that was made.
And so do you have a timeline for SEPA's consideration of their possible change?
Well, so the way the process works is staff has we work with SEPA and get an idea of what the capacity might be to bring additional units online. We budget accordingly, but the actual grant agreement isn't struck until the Housing Commission gets presented the actual request. So I'm telling you what we're anticipating will be requested and thus was budgeted for, but the grant request hasn't actually been considered as of yet.
And can you talk about the viability of the Housing Trust Fund?
Right now, the Housing Trust Fund is doing very well based on pretty quickly with that development. So the fund is in good shape at this point, Mayor, and we do have a grant for $1 million that was in the 2022 budget that we've made to SEPA for 8 affordable townhome units. You've seen a presentation on that just recently, and that will be back with final documents soon.
Great. Councilmember Holloman.
So I wondered if you could explain the $85,000 per unit, right? It was what it is costing us, or what SEPA is projecting going forward. That is the cost of bringing a unit online. Why did the commission feel that 185 number that was necessary? Like, what was their reasoning for that? Because it's asking builders to bring on more than a unit, right? So what was their thought on that?
Their thought process was there's the difference between what we programmatically provide and
Right, so I understand that piece of it, but it seems to me that kind of the overarching theme of the affordable housing is that everybody like if it's a priority for the community, then the entire community shares that burden, right? So that's why federal, local, all sorts of resources go into bringing these units online, that it's not entirely the taxpayers of Highland Park or the builders of Highland Park or any one organization, that we all share in the cost of this affordable housing. So it seems to me that it's working as it should. I'm just wondering what's the reason at this point that it's already, the 85,000, even the higher amount is covered by the 125 we currently charge. So why now is there a need to increase it?
because the rationale is provided in the first item up on the screen. It's to reflect the average government subsidy from all sources needed to bring on an affordable unit based on our programmatic costs from 2018.
Okay. So
That's
okay,
simply
so
the
that's-
reason.
That's how they, okay, so
That's
we want to.
their logic, yes,
Okay,
correct.
that makes sense.
Correct.
And I can appreciate the idea that they want to pay for a whole unit, but in my opinion, part of the beauty of the program is that it does leverage other sources of revenue so that our community can maximize that. And based on the fact that we have successfully leveraged those fees, and even with an increased cost of $85,000, I remain comfortable leaving the subsidy at $125 for now, given the fact that we're facing an interest rate hike and a real estate downturn and all of those things. I don't see an overwhelming or compelling reason to change the current policy.
Thank you. Oh, you did have your hand up. Okay, I wasn't sure. All right, Councilmember Littlewer and then Bloomberg.
So along the lines of what Councilmember Holloman just asked, I'd like to hear the justification, because it was my understanding that before the Housing Commission, staff had looked at the 156 option in terms of raising it based on a formula. And I'd like to understand the rationale of the various options, because to her point, I mean, the headlines in the papers today were that the Illinois housing market is actually going down by the first of the year. Interest rates are going up. It's very much in flux. The last thing I want to do is sit on this council and vote like a council did in 2000 and I think it was 8, when they went from 100 to 200 and then had to bring it back down based on a recommendation. So I'd like to know a little bit more about a formula that seems a little bit more reasonable in terms of adjustments for interest rates, times changing since 2013, but not going all the way up to 185.5, because I don't understand the rationale.
Okay, well, I had indicated the commission's rationale, but I will talk a little bit about, there was two analyses that were used to inform their consideration. And what you're talking about is the sales price approach, I believe. And that did yield a lower number, and we could talk about that right now, if I may. So the sales price approach is the estimated total subsidy based on market sales prices by housing type, okay? The program experience approach, which is what the Housing Commission ultimately decided as part of their rationale for the actual fee in lieu they proposed, is based on our actual programmatic experience. What did SEPA buy homes for? How much did it cost? Ultimately, the net cost after selling them, that's the total subsidy. And that's not just what Highland Park paid, but that's Highland Park and all other government monies. So that's the other approach. So talking about the sales price approach that you're referring to, so here's the methodology and the underlying assumptions. So we have several things. Target housing type, single-family detached homes. It's our scattered site program. That has been and continues to be our main focus. It doesn't mean that we haven't, looked at other things like townhouses and other things over time, but generally speaking, Highland Park's housing, single-family housing, is made up of detached homes. And so that's why that's the main target type. Affordability. For the purposes of this analysis, we use 80% of median income as the appropriate level of affordability for programmatic decision-making. Now, I will point out that is the top number, right? So affordable, what we're looking at is low-income threshold is 80% of median. And we're looking at that price point as the appropriate price point from which to derive this analysis. Acquisition target price. The top price of the lowest sixth of home sales approximates the appropriate target acquisition price for a unit required. Again, this came from our initial work in terms of this program in 2003. The lowest sixth of all the top of the lowest sixth is what we used as a reference point and thought was reasonable. So we've continued to use that throughout time. And then, like I said before, there's also a look at programmatic experience. We've done that in the past, and we did that again in this case. And in this case, when we're talking about programmatic experience, we're talking about a specific time period, 2018 to 2021.
Which, if you'll excuse me for 1 minute, is a very strange period in all of our lives when, because of COVID, everyone was looking to buy homes when the market was driven up and all housing stock in Highland Park disappeared because of it. So to look at that as a norm and to base anything on it, I think is a little bit difficult at this point.
Okay.
Well, 18 and 19 were pre-COVID.
Right.
Yeah, but when you figure that into the 19, to the 20 and 21, it skews it tremendously.
Okay, so
I'm not sure.
if may I continue? Okay, so again, just to remind everybody, what the fee represents, it's an estimate of the cost of providing an affordable unit. The target unit type, single-family detached, the Housing Trust Fund, something to note. The fee is an important source of revenue for the fund, okay? It's intermittent, it's very, you get a lot and then not a lot, and not enough. Now, we've done some things just to keep in mind. In 19, we looked at the code comprehensively, and one of the important changes we made was to institute what's called a payment in lieu for partial units required. So when you do the calculations for how many units are required in a particular development, frequently there are decimals, portions of a unit required, like 4.8, let's say, right? And so what we had changed in the code, and it's an important code in terms of the revenue generated for the program, is that those partial unit requirements, by right, the developer could pay in lieu for, okay? And that provides a source of revenue that we didn't otherwise have prior to that. Prior to that, we didn't have that source of revenue, okay? So what we did is we said, hey, we're going to say, instead of rounding up or rounding down on a unit, what we're going to do is ask for that as payment in lieu so we could have another source of revenue. The council, as you may recall, did not want to raise the demolition tax at that time, and this was thought to be another way to generate revenue. The council also made another important decision that really benefited the program quite a bit, although we're not yet realizing it because of what's happened, as Councilmember Littler mentioned, with regard to the pandemic. But the demo tax is now 100% of the revenue generated from that goes to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Now, that happened in 20. That was the first year that became in effect, and, the pandemic happened and our revenue from that source has dropped, but is recovering. So those two things, I just wanted to remind council of the decisions that were made that do help in terms of the ongoing funding of our trust fund, which prior to that was low for several years, and we were concerned about having enough revenue, and did accept payment in lieu to help bolster the fund, which has enabled us to do the grant that we've just done, which is $1 million grant, contingent on zoning approvals, of course, from council, that will go to 8 affordable townhouse units, brand new construction.
Right.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that, so
Yeah,
I see that there may be some questions.
There's more context.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
All right, Councilmember Bloomberg, then Stolberg, then Stone, and Holloman, is your hand back up? No, okay. Bloomberg, go ahead.
So, to begin with, the policy is not something we're discussing. The policy right now in Highland Park is that the amount of money is supposed to reflect the average government subsidy, which is $185.4 thousand. Specifically, the ordinance states that it is based on an estimate of the cost of providing an affordable housing unit. I think we've all acknowledged that the actual cost of purchasing, rehabbing, and putting a unit online would be much more than $185,500. And although that is what the ordinance calls for, I think the amount that, as staff has indicated, reflects the average government subsidy to bring an affordable unit through the city's scattered site housing program online to be a reasonable middle ground between what the ordinance specifies in its language and what has been recommended for us to do and what has been traditionally done. The discussion of how our inclusionary zoning program may or may not do to development does not, frankly, weigh in my consideration. There are periods of time when there are going to be fewer housing starts and there's going to be less development, and there are going to be periods when there's more development. Developers are shouldered principally with this burden, again, as the stated policy in the city, because they derive a significant economic development from developing in Highland Park. So there are periods where we considered cutting back, for instance, on the number of units that we were going to require a developer provide or pay in lieu for, because we hadn't had a lot of development. And lo and behold, although we made no changes, as the housing market changed, we got very large developments. For instance, the Claremont development in Ravinia happened as we were considering that. He asked for no relief at all from that particular burden. But it is a burden that we ask developers to bear because of the benefit that they derive from developing in Highland Park. So as we look at what we are required to consider, it would be impossible economically to ask a developer to pay for the cost of an entire independent unit. But to pay for the amount required to bring an independent unit online, which has been established as $185.4 thousand, is not the cost of paying for instance, a single-family house. It is not the cost to go out and purchase and rehabilitate a condominium. It is not the cost to obtain a rental unit and manage that rental unit. So to me, that $185.4 thousand is the middle ground. It does reflect our 5-year consideration of where the housing market currently is and where it may go over the next 5 years. One of the things that we have agreed is that we're only going to consider this every 5 years. So with that in mind, that's the figure that I'm comfortable with.
Thank you. Councilmember Stolberg.
Thanks, Mayor. Joel, you mentioned rewriting the code in 19. And I remember that, and I remember that as a long, multi-year process, including developer focus groups, and asking how burdensome or not is Highland Park's affordable housing requirement. And I recall the developers saying, we just want clarity, we want specifics, we want to know what we're doing coming into this. But I remember having the conversation at the time with Councilman Noble, where the language in the original revision said something on the order of, we want the units. Our preference is the units. And although we struck, I believe, that language in the code, I think our desire for the most part is still to have the units in most developments. And in doing so, the enticement for those projects and for those developers to bring on and comply with that code on site instead of fee in lieu is that they get a density bonus. And the one thing our code or our Plan and Design Commission can't recommend, we can have setback, we can have height, you can't grant density. So this is the only way in which the developers actually achieve a better ROI on their project. And if you look at, yes, rates are rising, but if you look at the rents that these developers are getting, and most of the units that have come on board in Highland Park have been rental units, not for sale units, the rents are rising much more quickly and more significantly than the cost of the funds, at least in the last 6 months. And I think that when a developer chooses to pay in lieu, either all or part, and like for the Albion projects, it was just a matter of putting that many units in there. I think Highland Park gets a benefit for that. And I think, without using the wrong word, there should be a penalty for paying in lieu. We want the units. Not all buildings are workable with those units. You know, the one thing that we're short of when developers come to the table, and I know I get excited about when they come before the PDC, is 3 bedrooms. Because a 2-bedroom doesn't work for a single mom with 3 kids who meets those, or a single dad, either way, who meets those affordable requirements. The one thing that doesn't work in any multifamily is the scattered site single-family home, which we know we need as well. And that fund has to be sustainable. And the demo tax isn't going to fund the needs of it. And we've been very fortunate with the large projects that we've achieved, I think, a balance of units on site that we desperately need, some of the larger units on site, and some money's going into the trust fund. So if you look at the ratio of what 67,000 buys you versus $125 fee, 125,000, or 87.5 versus 185,000. Yeah, we are getting a little bit more bang for our buck, but the developers who are building units that are for rent are achieving a better return on their investment because of the rates of escalation of the rents over the last few years. So I think I'd be comfortable with the 185. I think I still would want to encourage, through the density bonus, developers to build on sites. And in some situations where it's just not practical and we do need the scattered sites, I think the 185 is a much fairer representation than 125.
Thank you.
And if I-
Councilmember Stone? Oh, did you want to respond?
If I may just, it's
Yeah,
not
go
so much a
ahead.
response, but just to add a further context for council and reminder. Councilmember Stolberg is referring to penalty and such with regard to payment in lieu. So the way the code works is you have a requirement to do a certain number on site, a certain percentage, proportion, 20% is what that is. But the reality is that after the incentives, the density bonus, the market, what we refer to as the market rate unit bonus, that can manifest itself in one of two ways. As a density bonus, as Councilmember Stolberg mentioned, or it just, even if you don't use the density bonus part of it to go above what the zoning code requires, it still gets, the bonus still gets incorporated into driving down the proportion of units that are affordable in your development. So the reality is if you take advantage of the full bonus, which means you do all that you are required to on site, about 15.4% of units will need to be affordable on average, 16%. And so I just wanted to make mention of that. Now, and that's built into the way the code is structured, and that is the incentive, and that does encourage people to do things on site. Should they not, if you take in a continuum from doing all affordable unit requirements on site and doing none and just paying in lieu, let's just say hypothetically, if council were to approve it, you will find that there is a penalty of about 29% that is assessed to the 0 units on site versus all on site, okay? So the nominal value of the payment in lieu, it's actually more than that if the fewer units they do on site that they're required, basically the higher that goes up. Because of the way the incentive works for the market rate unit bonus, you don't get any market rate unit bonuses for payment in lieu. So it drives the percentage of units up and therefore the payment in lieu. See, so at 0, you have to provide a payment in lieu of 20% of the units. If you did them all on site, you only have to provide 15 to 16%. So that's where that extra penalty comes in terms of payment in lieu. So you set a payment in lieu to capture the desired level of subsidy, right? That you're whatever that number happens to be and how you justify it. And then there is a penalty, so the fewer number of units that they do, the fewer market rate unit bonuses, the higher percentage that need to be paid in lieu in terms of the fee in lieu, and thus that's the penalty.
But that's by design.
That is by design. I'm just reminding the council that there is such penalty structure already built in and works well at doing just that, what you're saying, discouraging payment in lieu at the extreme. Thank you, Mayor, I appreciate that.
Thanks. And that's what we want. We want a penalty because as Councilmember
Yep, it's intended.
Stolberg said, we want the units built.
Right.
And to me, the 185 number makes sense. Costs have increased. This has been $125,000 since 2013. And costs have increased more dramatically recently. So the cost of building these units is more. The goal of this program is to build the units. We want the units built. We need to charge accordingly. This has been on our agenda. We started this conversation in June. It's been put on our agenda multiple times. It's been pulled. But we've heard from no developers. No developers are here. No developers have complained. I think that the 125 was a bargain. I think the 185 is a bit of a bargain for them as well. It's a lot less money than it would cost them to build these units. So I'm on board with raising this fee.
Thank you. Councilmember Tapia.
Yeah, just to go on record, I agree with the policy and the philosophy. I agree with the math as you have put it out, so I just want to state that I would be in support of the 185.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor,
Actually, it's Councilmember Bloomberg, and then I'll call you. Thank you.
I just want to,
Yeah, no, thank you.
I was just going to say, rather than discussing it as a penalty, what it really represents is an effort to eliminate an economic incentive to pay rather than build.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep, thanks for.
That's what I meant to say.
You
That-
said-
no, that's,
that.
that's well said. Yeah,
I knew
that's
that.
right.
Got
your
there.
vibes.
That's good. Councilmember Littleworth?
I think to our predecessors, that being Councilmember Tapia and mine, I'm very impressed with the way this was structured. I actually did reach out to 2 developers and 2 real estate brokers over the weekend, because we have gone back and forth on this so many times that I was sure we were going to do it tonight. So I decided this was the time to make those phone calls. And frankly, both developers said to me that they thought it was perfectly reasonable to raise this up in light of that, but they also said that the 157, which was adjusting for time, was reasonable. And don't forget, and again, I say this with great pride, because I think Highland Park has been a real leader in this, we're requiring the 20%. And if someone really complies with this, as Joel just pointed out, they get a gift. They really only have to do the 15.4 or 6. And if they really don't, then they get hit with what could be considered a really high penalty. But that's because we're saying this is important to us. But Evanston, who, similarly does encourage this type of thing, they have a 10% requirement. Wilmette, not Lake Forest, Wilmette and, Winnetka do not have, I'm sorry. Winnetka and Wilmette do not have this kind of a requirement. I'm proud of us that we do have this, but I also think it was carefully thought out with a balance toward developers, toward affordable housing, toward making this work. And I don't want to see those people discouraged when in fact we have a really symbiotic relationship that has worked over these years, even these tough years. And to me, I would rather, the 5-year thing is a great time to reset and look it over, but we've also left room in there that if in fact market factors change, we can revisit this in 2 years. I just feel that to make such an extreme jump is really asking a lot, and frankly, everyone in this community, in the business end and in the housing end, is hurting in their own way. And so to me, making such a large leap is too much.
Okay. Thank you. Are you 157 or 125, or where are you?
I'm the 156 or 7, whichever.
That would be based,
Good formula.
that would be based on the sales data approach, right, using the market
And
sales
that's
data.
why
And that's shown in this slide here.
I just wanted a formula, and so I really appreciate your explaining why that formula is another one that works.
So,
And it does yield 156, Madam Mayor, yep,
Got it.
for that approach, the sales data approach, as opposed to the programmatic data
Right.
approach, which was the recommendation from the Housing Commission.
so by my tally, I have 5 in support of the 185.4 per unit. But I want to thank everybody for their thoughtful discussion, and Joel for the incredible analysis that went into all of this. This was a huge deep dive, and to follow up on what Councilmember Littleworth said, I think we're all very proud to be pioneers and have this long legacy of commitment to affordable housing in Highland Park. So,
Absolutely. We're very excited about what it's about, Mayor. I mean, this council has seen now, in total, 67 units, and there are 73 units that are now affordable overall in the city from the beginning of the program. But this council specifically has seen 67. So this is quite an achievement of the program and shows that it's not an unreasonable barrier to the development community, at least in the recent past. It's been demonstrated.
well, fingers crossed. And, yeah.
And that does change, you're right. As the economy changes, and I've said throughout the time that we've talked about this program, it is an extra cost, there's no question about it. We do have mitigating bonuses and fee waivers and such to help mitigate that, but it's not completely removed from the developer. And so as, as I would always say is, the community will see as it goes into less favorable housing development environment, Highland Park will see a curtail in units sooner. And then when it's coming out, it will fire back up again a little later. But that's how that will be. But in general, through most of the economic times, it is not actually deterring, and we've seen that over the last 7 years, certainly.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Not on this
Not
open
for open,
session, so
yeah,
I'm
not for
seeking a motion to go into closed session for purposes of approving closed session minutes, litigation,
No minutes.
no minutes.
Pending litigation.
Pending litigation and
Employment.
Employment
personnel.
matters. So 1 and 11.
Okay.
So motion to go into closed session to discuss employment matters. We do have pending litigation? or-
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Pending litigation, and I'm sorry, minutes?
No minutes.
Oh, no minutes. Okay, pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2, C1 and 11 respectively.
Second.
Will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilmember Tapia?
Aye.
Councilmember Stolberg?
Aye.
Councilmember Stone?
Aye.
Councilmember Bloomberg?
Aye.
Councilmember Holloman?
Aye.
Councilmember Littler?
Aye.
Mayor Rotary?
Aye, 7 ayes, no nays. We'll go into close. I'm going to ask you guys to hang on. We're going to grab face masks, so as we're going into a smaller room, out of respect for our council colleague, I'm going to ask that we all wear a mask. Thank you. I want to